Yo, this is so crazy. I barely have any words. Just watch real quick.
Well, some scary moments caught on tape. A Lucas County Sheriff's deputy in uniform has a gun pulled on him by a security guard.
And now that security guard faces criminal charges as the deputy tries to wrap his head around almost being killed in what should have been a very basic situation. I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty with the video you'll only see on 13 ABC. Sean.
Yeah, that deputy came here to force Seagate to ask a question at the IRS office, a step that almost cost him his life. As Lucas County Sheriff's Deputy Alan Gaston enters the IRS office, he's in full uniform with his badge and his firearm visible. He's on duty May 31st, but says he stopped at the office for a phone number to ask about a letter he got from the IRS. Deputy Gaston says the guard told him he needed to put his gun in his car. Gaston said he couldn't do that. The conversation ends with a gun pointed at the deputy's back. Gaston vividly remembers that moment.
Basically preparing myself to be shot at that moment, bracing for a shot in my back.
The whole thing caught on security camera as the guard follows Deputy Gaston to the elevator with the gun out, and it appears his finger very close to the trigger. The guard then tries to take Gaston into custody, once again with the gun drawn.
There's really no way to know how you're going to act when there's a gun pointed at you and when you think you're going to lose your life.
Gaston works as a defensive tactics instructor. He says he felt the best way to de-escalate this situation was to walk away. Eventually, Toledo police arrived after getting a 911 call.
He's got a gun and he won't leave.
But the caller from inside the IRS office never tells 911 the man with the gun is a uniformed deputy sheriff. Gaston's biggest concern as this incident unfolded were the other people inside the office.
If I'm going to get shot, which I felt like I was, it's not fair. They came there to do their business.
Gaston and his wife have now filed a civil lawsuit against the security guard Seth Eklund and the security company, seeking compensation after Gaston allegedly suffered emotional and psychological distress and lost wages. He's currently on medical leave from the Lucas County Sheriff's Department. He has a message for that security guard.
I would say clearly your training is lacking, and the fact that you went from 0 to 100 lethal force is unacceptable.
That security guard, Seth Eklund, is now facing a charge of aggravated menacing. He's due in court next week. We tried to reach out to him today, but could not contact him. We also reached out to the IRS for a comment today, but we've not yet heard back, Leah and Diane.
Oh, God. Okay, so let me start with this. I'm not, telling us that we need to galvanize and fight for this dude. And let me tell you why. Because did you hear what he said? He goes, oh, the security guard's training is lacking. Boy, if you don't get out of here with that nonsense, you know damn well it don't have nothing to do with his training, okay? He is racist as hell. You had on your full uniform. You still in denial, brother? You had on your full uniform. He had a gun in your back, and you still in denial? Black folks, I'm just, you don't see what's going on here? You don't see? Lord have mercy. Y'all, it's got to be ridiculous. He needs training. Get your money, bro. I hope you get your money, but you need to wake up. And he ain't the only one talking about training. This is ridiculous. I can't. You walked into an IRS building in your state or in your county, in your whatever, where your uniform is known. Even if, let's say, because in New York they wear blue, a lot of other places they wear black. Okay, so let's just say, but you're in, we know in New York police wear blue. So if you're in the state, so you're in the state. He knows you police. You think he was confused about who you were when you walked in there? He knew who you were. You was a nigga with a uniform. There's no training that could ever fix that. Fix that view, fix that ideology, fix that it can't be fixed. So what are you talking about? And if you think that it can't be fixed, you're fooling yourself. You know there's a saying, if you can't beat them, join them. This just goes to show that even if you join the white supremacists, not saying that all black cops are joining white supremacy, but this dude is clearly unaware of his blackness and of white supremacy. So if his idea is to join, if you can't beat them, join them. And that just goes to show you it doesn't work. You can join them. You can tap dance. You can get high up. You know what I'm saying? You could be the best nigga cheerleader for white supremacy that white supremacy has ever seen. And you can still walk into the IRS office and have a gun put in your back while you're in uniform. While you're in the uniform that you think is going to protect you from white supremacy.
Cornell Young Jr. was a young black man shot and killed by 2 white police officers during an altercation outside an all-night restaurant in Providence, Rhode Island. As we first reported last November, Young had a pistol in his hand, and the police thought he was coming to help the people involved in the disturbance. They were wrong. Cornell Young Jr. was an off-duty Providence police officer coming to
p.m., there was what appears to be a friendly fire incident between an off-duty police officer who was shot and killed by on-duty, plainclothes anti-crime cops in East Harlem, New York, on 125th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenue. The officer who was just getting off duty was Omar Edwards. He's a 25-year-old man. He lives in Brooklyn. He's been a cop for about 2 years. The officer who shot him is Andrew Dunton. He's a cop for about 4 years. The police are investigating the circumstances of the shooting and all the procedures that the officers took before and after it. Today, the mood at police headquarters is pretty heavy. The department brass is huddling in places, examining the ballistic evidence. They've gathered witnesses at the scene. They have about 5 of those. They've interviewed the officer who was driving the car who didn't shoot his gun and the sergeant who didn't shoot his gun. They're prohibited from interviewing the officer who fired until the district attorney, who's also looking at it, reviews the evidence. The reason for that is they don't want to give the officer a potential defense if he's compelled to answer questions. Today, we've learned that the officer was a member of the football team. He police football team, which is preparing for a game on Sunday against the fire department. His father-in-law is a 16-year veteran of the police department who works in the 67th precinct in Brooklyn. So it's a family of law enforcers for Officer Edwards. We don't know much about Officer Dunton. This was the first time he fired his weapon in the line of duty. He fired 6 shots. The medical examiner today found that Officer Edwards was hit 3 times. Once in the left forearm, once in the chest on the left side or in the chest area, and once in the left in the back, which appears to be the fatal wound. Today, the mayor, Bloomberg, said that the circumstances are still being investigated. These are life and death encounters that spill out in very quick moments on a rainy street late at night in the dark. In a very quick fashion, the district attorney, Robert Morgenthau, will of course review the evidence as well. Many people who are viewing it today, including Reverend Al Sharpton, are viewing it through the prism of race. So it raises issues of training, of communication, of race relations, of the pressures that police face. Today, May 29th, we have reporters blanketing the story and trying to piece together every element.
The family of a Chicago security guard killed by police as he tried to detain a gunman has filed a civil rights lawsuit against the officer who shot him and his department. Court documents say 26-year-old Jamel Roberson was working security at a bar and had detained a shooting suspect. Roberson, who is black, was wearing a security vest, and witnesses say people in the crowd yelled to arriving police that Roberson was a guard. Still, one responding officer shot him, who later died at the hospital. Friends and family say Roberson was studying to become a police officer himself.
He got his life took by people who he looked up to, who he wanted to become.
The Midlothian Police Department says the unnamed officer who shot Roberson has been placed on administrative leave.
Take a look at this photo.
A photo of 2 Garden City police officers who appear not to be wearing names or badges, but their names are now in this federal lawsuit filed by retired corrections officer Ronald Lanier, who says he worked at the Nassau County Sheriff's Department for 22 and a half years, served in the military and at Ground Zero. But inside this Western beef here in Mineola back in November, Lanier says the 2 officers took him down because and only because he is black.
I'm here to make a change, not just for me, for the yellow people that could not speak that.
Overcome with emotion at times, Lanier described how the 2 officers named in the suit, George Beard and John Russell, allegedly used excessive force and verbal abuse, even after he told them he was a retired officer and not the shoplifter they ran in here looking for.
They told me, shut the F up and get on the ground. And then they took me, they handcuffed me, and they whispered in my ear and said, you want to be a top cop? They started beating me on both sides of my ribs.
But the way that our system says that we can try and get some justice is to pull them kicking and screaming into a federal courthouse and make them answer the questions, the hard questions that they refuse to answer when we write them letters.
The shoplifter was found here and arrested, but not before Lanier was cuffed and placed in a police car, with no official report ever filed with his name. Instead, a lieutenant, also named in the suit, telling him,
we had you down on our incident report as John Doe.
Lanier still cringing at what else could have happened if he had been carrying his gun.
In their mind, they thought I was the guy. Just think about that. Just weigh on that. That's going to always be in the back of my head.
And we are back here live now at this Western Beef in Mineola, where we can tell you there are surveillance cameras inside the supermarket, but no surveillance video showing this actual incident was ever recovered. Now, according to the district attorney's office, an extensive investigation was done. It resulted in no criminal charges against the police officers. The matter was referred to the village of Garden City for any possible administrative action. None was taken. We also reached out to the village. Their attorney called us back telling us they cannot comment on pending litigation.